Welcome to the Bible Forum. I'm Warren Sprouse. It's Sunday night, May 2nd, 2020. We've got a lot of things going on in our world, and I want to tell you about some of them, all in light of the Word of God. This week, the House of Representatives leader, Nancy Pelosi, in the interest of cooperation, appointed 6 Democrats to the committee overseeing the federal coronavirus response. That was just a flat statement being made in the news this week. But underneath, you've probably already figured it all out. A committee that is completely made up of Democrats. Where's that going to go? We expect to see more and more of this kind of thing. We expect to see more hearings and investigations and all the rest of it into the federal coronavirus response. I have my own opinion. I think they overreacted. We've never done this before. There's a reason why we don't do it. One is that it just shuts the whole economy down. It's very destructive. We just went about $2 billion more into debt. People have been out of work. Some of those people will not ever get back to work where they were because the companies will realize they don't need them. They'll have people working from home. It's a whole different thing that's going to take place here as a result of this. And as I said, we have never done this before. We have had viruses that have run rampant through the society. We have treated them. We have left people out in the society. The idea is that you build immunity to these things as you are exposed to them in limited quantities or whatever. To completely isolate 30, 40, 50% of the population, get them away from all of this, makes them more vulnerable. Immunologists know this, which makes you wonder about the immunologists that are running this show. According to our government, the U.S. economy shrank by an annualized 4.8% just in the first quarter. That matters because it's the biggest quarterly drop in over 10 years. It shows the beginning of an economic slowdown that experts are expecting will get worse as the coronavirus roils the economy. We're going to come out the other side of the coronavirus thing sometime in the summer, but then we have the fall, and that's flu season, and we may go back into this again. We never know. But it's costing us a great deal of money. The Harvard Law professor Elizabeth Bartholet runs the child advocacy program at the university, says that homeschooling poses, quote, real dangers to children and to society. Dangers that because many of the parents look to the Bible instead of science for understanding the world, and that homeschooling should be prohibited except in rare, unique cases. She is quoted on this subject because so many parents are now homeschooling their children. And some of these parents may find that it's better to just continue doing that. It sounds like she's trying to head this off. Her opinion is, quote, the issue is, do we think that parents should have 24/7 essentially authoritarian control over their children from ages 0 to 18? I think that's dangerous. I think it's always dangerous to put powerful people in charge of the powerless and to give the powerful ones total authority. Like who? Like professional teachers, schooled in secular philosophies? Whose morals and values? You don't know. Not to mention the fact that some may have ulterior motives. And even if they do not, they have gone through the education system which has programmed them in a certain direction, which is not a biblical direction, not a family direction at all. There are no legitimate, demonstrative, scientific statements or discussions in the Bible that differ from established scientific fact. Where differences are thought to exist, they do so in the minds of those who are ignorant of what the Bible is actually teaching and or fail to comprehend what it is the Bible is saying. When you are interpreting the Bible, you are going back into the ancient perspectives. You are looking at those words as the first people who heard them lived and understood them to be. It's called interpretation. Today there are over 900 versions of the Bible in print. What's that tell you? These experts are trying to separate our children from their parents. This pandemic is showing that we don't need the experts. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is now pushing a guaranteed minimum income for Americans who struggle due to the pandemic. Never let an emergency or disaster go to waste. She said, quote, "Let's see what works, what is operational, and what needs attention," talking with MSNBC last Monday morning, adding that others have suggested a minimum income, a guaranteed income for people. Is that worthy of attention now? Perhaps so. Again, never let an emergency, a disaster, go to waste. Someone sent me a video recently of a man placing a small amount of hand sanitizer on a plate. I don't know if it was hand sanitizer now that I'm talking to you or whether it was Vaseline. It may have been Vaseline. Whatever it was, it sat on this little plate, and he took a match and held the match over it, and it burst into flames. Sanitizers, whatever these other things are with alcohol in them, give off fumes that burn. And we don't pay it much attention. We don't understand it. But the question becomes, when were the scientists, the experts, the people who know, when were they going to tell us? I'm 77 years old. I didn't know that. Never thought about it. Do you fly in airplanes anymore? Most people don't. Airline industry is losing $100 million a day. But it seems that even though the passengers are declining, airlines are finding more guns. 2.7 times more guns are being brought. Don't know if they get on the plane or not, but they're being brought. People are concerned about violence against them. Marriage rates in the United States have dropped. They have currently dropped to the lowest on record. We are now at a 118-year low. Not since 1867 have we seen 6.5 marriages per 1,000 people. And inquiring minds want to know why. I would suggest women's independence, gender equality. Officially or technically, statistically, the first marriage for men today is somewhere around age 30. For women, it's age 28. But now only 29% of all Americans marry at all. This has a proportionate result for that thing we call family and for our future. We learned this week that at least one person died and dozens more were wounded in a northern Lebanese city of Tripoli on Monday after protests. Protests over Lebanon's increasingly dire economic situation. Rioters set fire to an army vehicle and destroyed bank fronts, according to the Associated Press. What's going on? Well, the Lebanese national currency plummeted to a record low over last weekend, with the country's central bank having to issue instructions on Sunday night forbidding currency exchange shops from selling U.S. dollars at a rate higher than 3,200 pounds. I assume that's like pounds sterling, which right now I think is trading somewhere around $12, $13, I don't know, something like that. Despite the official rate being 1,507 pounds per dollar. Food prices in the country have reportedly skyrocketed. The country is now struggling with record unemployment, and it's all due to the coronavirus pandemic. Surveillance is taking a new turn. Safety is now taking the place of security. Something called heat mapping and immunity passports are about to become popular. Airlines and industries are considering measuring employees' temperatures, requiring they get vaccinated and tell their boss if they have coronavirus. Can you say privacy and civil liberties implications? Companies are going to be collecting a lot more information about you, and they're going to do it through what is called contactless payment systems and through various technologies which are still in development, things that will track people's virus exposure. James Canton, CEO of Institute for Global Future, tells Axios.com, quote, "We're going to be forced to be more biosecure because my infection could infect an entire village." The bottom line, your privacy is not as important as my health. Can you say slippery slope? Steve Jobs died a while back. Co-founder, majority shareholder in something called Apple Incorporated, along with Steve Wozniak. American business magnate, industrial designer, media proprietor, member of the Walt Disney Company's board of directors, founder, chairman, and CEO of something called Next. He died October 5, 2011. He was 56 years old. With a lingering death, Jobs had time to think and to write. He discovered the six best doctors in the world to be sunlight, rest, exercise, diet, self-confidence, and friends. He discovered what he called 5 maxims by which we should be able to live. He did not discover these until he was facing death. He discovered that it was important to educate your children to be happy, not wealthy. To value things, not the price of things. He learned that it's important to eat your food as your medicines. Otherwise, you will have to eat medicines as food. The ones who love you will never leave you for another. Because even if there are 100 reasons to give up, he or she will find one reason to hold on, if they love you. He found there's a big difference between a human being and being human, and that only a few really understand it. He found out that you are loved when you are born. You will be loved when you die. In between, you just have to manage. Also, he said, if you want to walk fast, walk alone. But if you want to walk far, walk together. MatSu sounds like a Japanese dish, but MatSu is a school district in Alaska. A school district that has recently removed several books from its curriculum due to what the committee calls, quote, controversial content. Included in the list are books like Catch-22 by Joseph Heller, The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald, Maya Angelou's I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. According to TV station, I suppose, KTUU, the MatSu school board's vote was 5-2 in favor of removing these books. The board also voted to get rid of the New York Times and the Learning Network, a teacher resource program. Board Vice President Jim Hart said, quote, if I were to read this in a professional environment at my office, I would be dragged to the Equal Opportunity Office. I'm guessing that Jim was on the board and voted no. Board member Jeff Taylor added, quote, is there a reason we include books that we've labeled as controversial in our curriculum? I would prefer they were gone. A school district document lists various reasons why the books were challenged in the first place. It asserts that Angelou's novel is anti-white and contains sexually explicit material. Ralph Ellison's The Invisible Man contains objectionable language and references to rape and incest. And Catch-22 has a handful of racial slurs, and its characters speak with typical military men misogyny and racist attitudes of the time. Now, in the course of this story, as word of the decision started to circulate, the backlash was fierce. Tweets, Facebook posts, and all manner of social media displeasure was shown. River Kelly, a high school student at MatSu Career and Tech, told KTUU what he was hearing from his friends. He said, quote, almost everybody I've talked to has been shocked, demanding that these bans be taken back. River Kelly is 15 years old. Former Colony High School English teacher Peter Hoppel was even more succinct, saying, quote, I'm stunned, absolutely stunned. Mike Okeson, principal at MatSu Career and Tech, used to teach English, said, I'm pretty familiar with all the books. If you ask me to articulate for you what's controversial in The Great Gatsby, I could not do that. The MatSu Education Association condemned the board's vote. Union President Diane Shibe said the decision was, quote, a blatant effort to curtail critical thinking, stifle discussion, deprive our students of the opportunity to share, as a class, the experience of studying some of the most classic American literature. According to NBCnews.com, Hart noted the books aren't banned, as they are still available in district school libraries. The goal is just not to require them to be read. Here's a calculated effort to spare teenagers the vulgarity and immorality of adult literature. And parents, as well as teachers and students, are objecting. The question becomes, why not read these stories to first graders? And the answer is, they aren't equipped to handle it, for a number of reasons. Books like that would color and confuse their view of life, not to mention sex and vulgarities. But 15-year-olds? Well, they've already heard all this. What's the problem? The problem is that maybe some adults understand they've already heard it all, and that public education should not be about filling children with word pictures and concepts parents may not appreciate. Just because children have heard it all doesn't mean it has to be officialized. After all, the public school system exists to educate my children, not just your own. UVA is under fire, University of Virginia. Not for the memorial to enslaved laborers, which will be unveiled as soon as the COVID restrictions are lifted, but for the shape of the hand grips on the crossed swords on their new logo. That's right, the hand grips are serrated, or as they say, serpentine. And he calls to mind the walls that were erected in the 1600s to keep slave laborers from climbing over them. And as long as they are depicted on that logo, it's racist. Why? Because it incites racist rhetoric. Meaning, people will ask, why are the handles shaped that way? It could be that that's just grips, like handlebar grips. No, it's racism. Now, you probably can't find anyone in this country more sympathetic toward people of color than your host. They live with a reminder of their past every waking moment. They look in the mirror. They see the color of their skin. They do not have to be reminded of it by me or by you. However, this university is not creating a logo to demean that heritage, but to exalt it, to lift it up. You can't tell me these people living in Virginia, reaching out to black men and women, providing the means for rising above their circumstance, recruiting black students with scholarships and grants, is going to create a logo to remind them of their slave heritage. That's not even good business. That would offend a significant number of alumni who give money to their alma mater. I say give it a rest. In an article I've entitled, Will This Be Banned or Will I reference a published article in something called thecollegefix.com. Rutgers professor Brittany Cooper offered her thoughts on the desire of many Americans to reopen the country as the coronavirus curve flattens out. On Tuesday, in what the website called a Twitter rant, the women's and gender studies professor wrote, quote, I feel like most black people are clear that it is utterly absurd that this push to reopen the country is all about a gross necro-political calculation, that it is black people who are dying disproportionately from COVID. I might add, this professor is a young black woman. She's about 40-something years old. Cooper goes on to allege white conservatives don't care about the lives of blacks and that the, quote, white supremacists among them, end of quote, indeed want a massive winnowing of black folks in order to slow demographic shifts and shore up political power. The author goes on to write, what the article can't print are the vulgar pejoratives against everyone whose skin color is not like hers that pepper the tweets. According to her faculty page, Cooper received her PhD in American Studies from Emory University. Her research interests included black women's intellectual history, black feminist thought, hip-hop feminism, and hip-hop studies. Thoroughly modern. And finally, there's the whole issue of our president and fish tank cleaner. You remember when the president thought out loud about possible therapies to combat the coronavirus? It's called hydroxychloroquine, or quine. The press had a field day. The president was speaking to an anti-malarial drug which has seen remarkable results. Michigan State Representative Karen Whitsett's husband ingested the drug and his COVID symptoms disappeared within 2 hours. A nationwide survey indicated 65% of doctors would prescribe this drug. A nationwide survey of 65% of doctors would prescribe this drug to their family members if they contracted the disease, and 67% said they would take it themselves. 6,000 doctors from 30 different countries rated hydroxychloroquine as their number one treatment option. Now, it wasn't long, however, before a woman was blaming the president for her husband's death. He died of hydroxychloroquine. And the press went crazy. Their message? See, we told you. The man's an idiot. Well, as with most things, the rest of the story eventually gets out. Seems this woman fixed up a cocktail for her husband of chloroquine, phosphate, and soda. Her husband drank this cocktail and promptly died. The wife was in intensive care in critical condition, but she survived. And here she is, blaming Trump for his death. But here's the rest of the story. This woman was using fish tank cleaner. Seems the wife made up a cocktail consisting of 1 teaspoon of fish tank cleaner, ostensibly placing 1 teaspoon in each glass of soda. The husband, a retired mechanical engineer, people who tend to think analytically, he just took what she gave him, merely drank it down, thinking this would protect him from coronavirus. So President Trump killed her husband. But then as time moves on, we learn. One of the man's friends told the Free Beacon they were all skeptical because this man was a level-headed retired engineer, an intelligent man who designed systems for John Deere in Iowa. And they can't picture him saying to his wife, "Yeah, please, I would love to drink some of that fish tank cleaner." The wife is now being charged in his death. But the mainstream media went with it. I haven't seen a retraction yet, have you? Welcome to the 21st century. We're going to come right back. I've got some coronavirus news for you. That chilling effect that you feel might be real. Stay tuned.